Hi, everyone. Welcome to class. My name is Edie Summers, and today we're going to be talking about how you can write a good college paper. So you can share your comments and questions in the chat, and I'll check those out when I'm able through the time that we're talking here. And you can see that I've already shared my screen. I'm going to be sharing a paper that I wrote on branding for digital marketing at the MBA level. But this class would be good for anyone who is interested in writing a good paper, whether it's at the high school level, let's say you're writing essays, or maybe the undergraduate level or master's level. So I know that sometimes it can feel intimidating to write a good paper, but it's definitely possible. And I'm just going to share some of my best tips to get you started. The most important thing that you can do is to look for your instructor's outline. Generally speaking, a really good paper does have an outline, whether it's one that's shared by your professor or maybe you can follow the general outline of writing a good paper, which would be starting with a really good thesis in your first paragraph. And then you want to, the following paragraphs are going to be going deeper into that thesis. So proving your thesis, giving really good logical arguments and analysis of your thesis. So that's what the body of the paper is going to be. And then there's the conclusion that would be the final paragraph. And sometimes, of course, your professors, especially at the maybe undergraduate level, definitely master's level, are going to ask for references. Those would go at the end of your paper. And you would do in citations as well. And I'll go through my paper and show you what that looks like. But the most important thing is they definitely want to hear what your voice is. They want to know what your opinion is, what your analysis is. And then, of course, anytime that you're referencing other people or other people's ideas, make sure that you have those. It's really clear that you're referencing them. And then, of course, you can use quotes and use references if those are required. But try not to panic. What really helps with writing a good paper is having a good outline. For this class and for this purpose, really think about that. That's hopefully my biggest takeaway for you today is that just remember that the key to writing a good paper is having a good outline. So let's take a look at the paper, one of the papers that I wrote for an MBA grad school class. Let's see if I can get this here. I've got my screen share here, and I hope you can see this. Okay, so and again, my professor definitely gave me an outline for this up into you can see the way that it's titled. He had a really specific assignment for how to title it, and that's super, super important often. That kind of helps them keep it organized, all the papers that they get organized. So you really want to pay attention to the details that your teacher or professor gives you. And then they're going to help you a lot of times with the framework too. So he has the first part here is part one, theoretical framework. And so the very first paragraph here is the theory. And that could also be your opening statement. It could be what you're trying to prove, or what your topic is. That's your first paragraph. So for here, this one is branding is key in influencing a consumer's perception of a company. Brands have personalities that are connecting with customers. And then you can see I have an citation inside. And this is usually you just do the last name and the date, the year. And there's, of course, a way to do, if you have more than one person that you're referencing, like you can see down here, Yao and Slater, and then 2023. Now, of course, at the end of the paper, you have to put the references in. So, but it's really important to just kind of stick with the outline, what your teacher gives you. And then the first paragraph is usually what your topic is. And you're going to have an opening statement, or maybe it's a couple of statements that are your opening statements. I have 4 sentences here. This is a pretty short opening paragraph. Yours might look different. It might be longer, but you kind of want it to be The opening paragraph and then the conclusion, kind of your last paragraph, are usually setting the tone for what's going to be included inside. So you want to think about clarity. You want to think about what's succinct. Make it really clear and obvious what your opening statement is and what you're going to be talking about. That's what your opening paragraph is. And then you can start to deepen into what you're talking about. So now you're going to be getting into your own opinions and your own analysis in the following paragraphs. And then also you might be referencing more quotes and other people again. And those can be really, really valuable. What's also really important as you get deeper into your paper is make sure that you do include an analysis of the topic or topics. A lot of times that's what your professors are looking for. Make sure that your topics and your analysis make sense, meaning make sure they are logical. That's super, super important. You also want to pay attention to how your sentences flow. Sometimes you can get good feedback by reading your paper to yourself out loud as you go along, or when you're done. Read it out loud to yourself. Does it flow? And do the sentences work well together? Do they sound good individually? Do they work well together? Does your logic make sense? And as you get deeper into the analysis, that can take a while. Sometimes you have to, really ask yourself the question, is what I'm saying does it make sense? Because your professors are going to be looking for a really good analysis of your topic, which is your first paragraph. So then as you get deeper on, again, here, let's look at the framework here. So we've got part 1, theoretical framework, and it's set up here in the first paragraph. This is our topic. Branding is key in influencing a consumer's perception of a company. That's the topic right there. And so now we're going to dive deeper into that. Here's the rest of the theory in the first paragraph here. Brands have personalities that are connecting with customers. And then I go a little bit deeper. The personality of a brand has had a major influence on consumer behavior, offline and online. This is my theory. This is my topic. What's in the first paragraph here? Okay, so now in the second paragraph, I'm diving deeper into what I explained here in the first paragraph. Brands stand out not only by how they position themselves in the marketplace, but also by how well they connect with customers. In other words, brands. Now, the first sentence here that I've said, this is a quote. And again, you can see that I've cited the quote in the format that you're supposed to do within a paper. And again, sometimes this only happens at the graduate level. You may not have to use references at the undergraduate level. I really don't know. I didn't have to use them when I was at the undergraduate level, but I definitely had to use them at the master's level. I studied counseling at the master's level and business at the master's level, and every single time in every single paper I had to use references. Usually they'll talk you through how to write the references, and we can do it a little bit today. That can also be kind of its own class. Don't panic about references. There are a lot of great references out there that teach you how to do references. It's not as hard as it might seem, or it's not as daunting as it might seem. So don't worry too much about it, but definitely make sure you have them in there if they're requested. And then at the end of your paper, you're going to be putting the actual citation in. But you can see here that in my second paragraph, where I'm diving deeper into the topics that I have laid out in the first sentence, I first start with a quote. Brands stand out not only by how they position themselves in the marketplace, but also by how well they connect with customers. Now I'm getting into my own words. So I say here, literally, in other words, or literally it's in my words now, brands that emotionally connect with customers have a greater impact of influencing customer behavior. Now this, I think, is a rough draft. I might rephrase that. I would probably say have a greater chance of impacting or influencing customer behavior. I'm pretty sure this is a rough draft that I have here. I realized that as I was going down through this, I still have some of my professor's notes in here. So this is not the final version. But again, you're going to be getting deeper into your own take, your own words, your own opinions, and your own analysis of these topics in the subsequent paragraphs here. So this is where you really have a chance to shine. Now, I'm a big fan of using quotes and referencing people. You always want to make sure it's probably a really good idea to run your final paper through a plagiarizing check to make sure that nothing you're even accidentally plagiarizing, and also, run it through Grammarly or Google Docs to catch or like spell check, to catch any obvious grammar errors. That can make a really big difference and get you more points. But try not to panic about your papers. Really create a nice outline and then just take it step by step. It's easier than you think if you break it down. You can see I get deeper and deeper here. Now this goes on for quite a while now. My professor told me to do this. He asked me to put now part 2 in, analysis of shift. Now look, he even has here, so you can tell that this is a rough draft of one of my papers, because I even put in his notes, recommended length 400 to 600 words. I always put in the notes. Now this is something I only got usually at the graduate level was notes on how to do a paper. But I can only imagine these days that even at the high school and undergraduate level, your professors and teachers probably have really detailed notes for you and how to write your papers and how they want them. So I put them into my papers or essays to start with, so I can remember exactly what they're asking for. So you can see here I've got recommended length 400 to 600 words. Some teachers are real sticklers for even the number of words that you have in. So you always want to do a word check count. You can do that in Google Docs. Just copy and paste, copy and highlight the whole document, and Google Docs will tell you what the word count is, so that you don't go over. Or even for an individual section, you can do that. So you can see there's part 2. This is analysis. So again, in a paper or an essay, as you get deeper into the body, you're getting into the analysis of your thesis. Okay, and then now he wanted me to use Chat GPT there, and I think that these are probably questions that he wanted me to answer. And look, I've even got his notes in here about his hints about how to do it. So, and then implications. So again, this is kind of tied to analysis, but this is how he wanted me to structure it. So yeah, so again, you can see that this is a rough draft, and it looks like I finished this paper, but and then you've got the conclusion, and that's usually what your either one final paragraph is, especially for an essay. It's usually just one paragraph, but obviously this is a little bit more fleshed out here. But he wants me to keep it pretty short, right? 1 to 200 words, 100 to 200 words. And this was what's really important about a conclusion. And he even says it right here is concisely, be concise in your summary. I would say be concise in your thesis, in your opening paragraph too. Be concise and clear. He's got it right here. Concisely summarize your analysis and clearly present your stance. Now, again, we've got the topic here. Okay, so now this isn't my final version of the paper, like I said, and then you can see I already put the references in here. So references usually go below. And again, I'm not going to do a deep dive into references today, but there are a couple different ways to do references. It depends on the type of class you're in and the subject matter. There are references for different types of disciplines. So make sure that your professor or teacher is going to tell you what type of references they want. And then I think for this one, we even had an appendix. Okay. And they also told us how to set up the appendix. Okay. So again, we're not going too far into it today, but hopefully that helps you a little bit. I think the most important thing to remember today is to create an outline first, so that you have something just you can fill in And you can always come back to it and fill it in as you go. And don't panic too much about, the content. If you've done the reading or watched the videos, whatever is required to do the paper, just know and trust that you have absorbed more from the content than you think you have. And then you can always, this is how I do anything, whether it's writing a book or writing a paper, is I do it in chunks, right? Like first I read the material or I think about the material, and then I write an outline, and then I start filling it in. That's the easiest way to do it. That doesn't get you overwhelmed. And know that it's often the small details that professors are looking for, and those small details can get you those points that can make the difference between an A and a B or a B and a C. Think about making sure that you're citing whatever quotes you have. Make sure that you are giving, most of the paper is in your own voice. That's super, super important. Make sure there's an opening thesis or statement or topic that's super clear and succinct. And make sure that the summary is super clear and succinct. And then make sure the body of your paper or thesis or essay takes a deep dive into analysis of the topic or topics. That's a winning formula for a paper. And the deeper dive that you can take, and make sure again that your sentences make sense, make sure your logic makes sense, maybe have someone else read it back to yourself, run it through, a spell check. All of those things are going to make a difference in you writing a really, really good paper, and you will get better over time, I promise. So thanks so much for listening, everyone. And I'll check your chats over here. Let's see if any have any comments, and then I can respond to those comments. And you are more than capable of writing a great paper. Take your time. Don't panic, and you'll get better at it as you go. And when you get that first really good grade too, that will give you the confidence to know that you can write even more really good papers and get really good grades. It's definitely doable. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you guys next time. One of my other classes, or I want to do a deep dive into talking about how to interpret a poem or a piece of literature and then writing an essay around it. Because sometimes I think that's another topic where people can kind of start to panic, is that if you're given an inscrutable poem, meaning something that doesn't make any sense or doesn't seem like it's knowable or understandable, and then you have to somehow magically write a paper around it or an essay, I'm going to do a deep dive into that. I have an undergraduate degree in English literature, and I love poetry and literature. I had to write a lot of essays about them too. And I understand that sometimes poetry can be a little bit mystifying. And so I'll do a video around breaking down the best way to write a good essay that is about a piece of literature. We'll probably do a poem, because those are a little bit easier to digest and work with in a class format. But again, that's also very doable. I'll just give you a really quick tip about it. Is you don't have to, you can read through a poem and see what naturally stands out to you, and you can write about that part of the poem in your essay. You don't have to understand the entire poem or the entire work of literature in order to write a good essay about it. I think that's a really good tip. So we'll take a deep dive into that next time, but just know that, and that's true for any topic that you're writing about. You don't need to understand every single thing about the subject that you're writing about. Choose what stands out to you. Choose what you feel like you have a good understanding of already, or that you would be able to clearly explain. Choose those topics for your papers. Focus on your strengths. Focus on what comes easy to you, and then expand on that for your papers. And yes, that sometimes we have to dive deep into topics that we don't understand, and that's a great learning experience. But always come from a place of strengths when you're working on papers, academics, doing presentations, anything like that. Focus on your strengths. Okay, thanks everyone. I'll see you next time. Take care. Bye.